Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Cities Skylines with me, CityZilla. And in today's episode, we are going to be running over visual mods. And four in particular that I use: Theme Mixer, Render It, Play It, and Relight. And Relight isn't really needed, but I'm going to dive into some reasons why I still use Relight. And so let's go ahead and jump right in. And so the first visual mod that we are going to jump into today is Relight. And the reason we're going to jump into it is because I normally just set it and leave it in the background. This is the only visual mod that I almost never check. I literally just set it once and I'm good to go. And it kind of runs in the background. I found that even with Render It, having Relight really helps me to capture a specific look. And so what I'm going to do is hit Alt-Shift-L once I have it installed, and it's going to bring up these settings. And so we are going to dive into tone mapping with Render It, so I'm not going to address it right now. Literally the only thing out of this that I use is the temperature. And the reason why I keep this is because this temperature isn't as strong as the temperature inside of Render It. Render It, the blue is a little too sharp, whereas this is more of your professional color grading kind of temperature scale. And this is something that you can see in post-process as well in like Premiere Pro or DaVinci Resolve or whatever program that you use. And what this does is it just goes from really cold to really warm. And if you're unsure of what setting to choose, what I normally do is I'll go to the extremes. I'll just immediately, because then it gives you a contrast and your eye kind of knows what is more real. And so what I normally do is I drag this guy to the left, and I don't want to go too extreme. I recently have been trying to make my episodes a little bit warmer, but I do want it to be pretty cold. So I think we're going to go to -0.5. And the reason why we're going to go this far on Relight is because we're actually going to use Render It to kind of go in the opposite direction. But basically what that does is it just cleaned it up a little bit. It got rid of that weird kind of yellow color that we had. And this is something that is pretty common in the game. It's just really yellow. And though in a lot of environments, this yellow is very authentic, I just don't think it looks very good on video. And so I normally try to tone it down just a little bit. I think it just looks a little more real when it's like this. And so that is Relight, super easy. You can also adjust a ton of other settings in here, like sun temperature, and you can kind of adjust the sky and stuff. I normally don't look at the sky, and I don't adjust the contrast or gamma or brightness in here, though you can. This is, one of the things that you can come back and adjust, and it can kind of help you. But for right now, we're not going to. And so the second mod that we're going to jump into is Theme Mixer. And so Theme Mixer is this little guy right here, super great mod, has a ton of functionality. What Theme Mixer allows you to do is customize the theme, customize textures, customize your water color and texture, so you can really adjust like the rapids or how the water break looks and stuff like that. But then it also allows you to customize the sun position and the exposure. And these are ultimate eye candy settings. And so we are going to jump into the first setting, which is themes. And the theme that I use is this Clavera map theme. I really like it. It's got a good color. We're going to go ahead and increase the lighting first. So we're going to come into exposure, increase that up. And the reason why I like this theme is because it has a decent watercolor. I really like the color of the water breaks, this like kind of foamy stuff. But then I really like the texture of the cliffs. There are other themes on Steam that have really awesome textures for these cliff faces. I just don't think that having really rocky kind of landscape, especially for a tropical map like this, is super realistic. If you're doing more of like a boreal map or something like that, then yes, go for the rocks. It looks great. But for a map like this, I think this is perfect. It looks really good, and you still get some good texture over just the vanilla cliff textures. And these are things that you can adjust. You can literally come in here and almost adjust like every texture: grass, cliff, pavement, oil, or it doesn't matter. And then you can even come in here and slide it around and adjust like the density of the texture. It's really robust. There's so many things that you can do with this. And so the only other things that we're going to do in here is jump into our color LUTs, and we are going to be doing color grading and tone mapping. And so this is only really to set the overall tone for the map. And so we're going to go ahead and click that Clavera, and you can already see it has gone really blue. So now it's extremely cold, but the watercolor has just turned extremely blue. The greens are really popping in here. This looks really good already. Honestly, for a lot of people, this would probably be enough. And so the only other thing I'm going to dive into this is our road textures. And it's just going to be kind of an introduction into some of the customizations you can do in this. I don't really like the road textures that come with the clay remap theme. And so I do use other ones. And it's this Owl's Obeld Albedo, and I don't know if I'm butchering that, but you can see it just changed the road texture right there. I really like this road texture as it kind of has some cracks in it and it looks just a little more authentic. So if we come down here and look at this, you can see like the little cracks in the road and it just looks really good, and you get a nice black street look. And I think overall it just looks a lot better. And so the last thing we're going to touch on here is in this atmosphere tab. And this is the ultimate eye candy replacement. So you have longitude for the sun, you have latitude. And so this is where if you're, content creator or you're just working on a certain area and you don't really like the white that's bouncing off those buildings, you can adjust the sun to be on the opposite side of whatever you're working on. And so say like we're working on this side right here. Well, the sun is hitting this side. So if we come over here, we can get the shadow to fall on this side. It just makes it look a little better. You don't get as much of that white light. It looks a little cleaner, and then you can kind of increase the exposure a little bit. And there's literally so many settings again. And then if you really want to with the water as well, I believe it is in here. So we can go in here and actually change the color of the water if we wanted to. So I think like this, I think I went a little lighter because I'm trying to go for more of a tropical feel, and having that super dark color is just not what I'm going for. I'm going for like a Keys or Florida kind of look, which is that crystal blue. It's almost even whiter than that. It's like this, some of the bluest water I've ever seen. It's almost like just a tropical island, but I think that's a little too blue. So we are just going to come down here. We'll probably go like that. It's very similar to what it was, but we're just going to keep it at that. I just wanted to get that little bit of a lighter blue. We are going to jump into Play It real quick. And Play It really isn't a visual mod so much. It's more of in combination with Theme Mixer and Render It to complete the replacement of Ultimate Eye Candy. It allows you to adjust the game speed, which is super important if you're trying to just speed up time real fast, maybe build out a whole area or whatever. The day-night speed, but then also the time of day. And so this is super important. Honestly, it works a lot better than Ultimate Eye Candy as well. So I'm probably going to be shifting through day and night cycle a little bit faster. But we can kind of look at, where's our little water guy? Oh, it's right here. So we can kind of look at some of our lights that we've put in, and these guys right there. It just looks really cool. And then we have this blue light on here. And these are things that with Ultimate Eye Candy were just a little bit harder. I had to go in and turn on the day night cycle first because there was just like a weird glitch where it wouldn't let you. And so Play It definitely works a lot better. It allows you to adjust the rain and fog and cloud intensity as well, and the northern lights. And then you can also lock them. So like I keep the fog intensity locked because I don't like the fog in the game. I feel like it really clouds the vision and just kind of makes it frustrating to play. And so last but not least, and this is really the big one, I've kind of kept the best for last, is Render It. And this is a game changer. This is a recently new mod for me. I've only had it for maybe about a month. I was looking around at some other content creator stuff. I think it was Cities Skylines World. And I'd gone through his mod lists and found Render It. And if you guys haven't checked out his content, some really cool stuff as well. And so Render It is extremely robust. You can create profiles, you can adjust lighting and textures, and then you can come in here and adjust anti-aliasing. You can adjust the ambient occlusion, which is those little small shadows that you get. You can adjust the bloom, which is the amount of reflected light off of buildings. And then you can go into color grading, full color grading, and tone mapping as well. And so we are going to go ahead and jump into this. And so I'm not going to mess with profiles right now. I do have a profile. I'm not going to load it though. I want to show you guys everything that I run into. And so the first thing I normally do is jump into lighting. And I normally try to just find a good lighting. I normally don't keep it that bright. I think it's a little too much, but I do mess with the shadow strength. And so let's go ahead and look at where our shadows at. So I normally try to look for something a little more realistic than this shadow. I think that that's just not as dark as it would be in real life. And so I normally try to go like that. It's still a pretty bright day, so it's fair to assume that this wouldn't be like black, but I think it would definitely be darker. Normally, even when you're driving out on a really sunny day, if you're in the shade, like you're going to know you're in the shade. It is significantly darker. And so then we're going to not really mess with textures. These are really advanced features. I don't find too much of an issue with the overall textures. I really only mess with these if I'm trying to take pictures for like a thumbnail or something. But then post-processing is our next one. We are going to jump into this anti-aliasing and hit the FXAA. And then we are going to hit ambient occlusion and color grading. And color grading is going to kind of change this. And so we're going to go like that. And it is already going to make it much brighter. You can already see. And so we are going to jump back into lighting real quick and just kind of tone this down. This is a little much. It's okay though. And then I think we will jump back into theme mixer, go to atmosphere, and decrease that exposure just a smidge. Not a lot, but just enough. And so we will jump out of here. And then now we can go to advanced. And under advanced, our first tab is this fast approximate anti-aliasing FXAA, which is what I chose. And so you have extreme performance on one end, which really isn't bad. You can see there's some sharpness in here. It's not terrible, but if you go over to extreme quality, all of a sudden you can see a little bit of fuzziness. And so what anti-aliasing does is it decreases the amount of jaggedness in your sharp textures, especially for an old game. A lot of these are just not very smooth. Like you see those little squares right there. It's just something that you get in especially older games. And so having this additional anti-aliasing is very important. And I do play with all of my settings maxed out on my graphics card, which really isn't a whole lot. I don't have a top tier graphics card. I have about a mid-level. It's an RTX 2070. And so most people can do this on their computer. You really don't need like a powerhouse computer in order to do these and still run pretty well. And so this is the other anti-aliasing setting. I don't like it because the jitter is a little too much. And what a jitter is it's kind of like a shake that happens. And so I don't normally mess with TAA. And so ambient occlusion was that setting that we chose. And these are those little shadows that you get almost in like dark crevices or like windowsills. And they're really important. And so so you can't really see intensity until you can identify them first. So if you come over here, if you look at the bottom of the buildings, you can see that they are getting a little bit darker or lighter. And this is just to create a more realistic environment for like crevices. And so these are definitely things that you would see like near the bottom of these buildings. It would definitely be a little bit darker. There wouldn't be as much light. And so I normally try to make this a little darker, not too much, but then you can increase the intensity once you find it. And so I normally go like right there. I think that's about good. It's not too much. You obviously wouldn't have this be like black, but it would definitely be darker. It just wouldn't be completely dark. And then your next setting is sample counts. And these are your little data points and they affect the overall quality and performance based off of what you choose. I keep it on high. Again, this game is not super heavy graphics card wise. This game is more CPU heavy and RAM heavy. And so maxing all this out really isn't a whole lot. I mean, even with my RTX 2070, I almost never get above 50% utilization. And so the only thing that I really do in here is high precision. And what this does is uses higher precision depth texture with the forward rendering path, which may impact performance. And I don't really understand a whole lot of that, but I do understand the overall look of it. So if I come in here and I hit high precision, what it does is it just creates a little more texture in these environments. And so you can really see it on the grass on here. So if we go out a little bit, uncheck that guy and then check it, you just get a little more shadow in here. You get a little more texture. It looks more realistic. So color grading, I don't hit either of these. Vanilla tone mapping is the tone mapping that is created by the game. It's that yellowish kind of color. And then the vanilla color correction is that tropical one that we had already overridden. If you click this, then it tries to run both color LUTs at the same time. And a color LUT, by the way, is a color lookup table, kind of like a reference chart for color. And so color grading is literally just a manual use of color temperature, tint. This is the same thing that we used in Relight, but this is what I was talking about with the temperature. So you see how it's so really blue and yellow. It's a little too much for me. And so I normally will keep the Relight on blue, and then I normally bump this up to this side so that we can kind of increase that yellowness a little bit, because we don't want it to be too blue. It just becomes a little too much, but I also don't want to introduce any of that fuzziness into the game. So I think like right there, it's still cold, but you can see a little tinge of yellow in there. It just looks a little better. It's softer on the eyes. And then post exposure as well. If I feel like it's a little too dark, I'll normally jump in here and just increase this slightly. especially when recording. It's super easy to have the game appear really dark. It looks like we have a huge fire right there. Tint is the difference between green and like a magenta. I normally don't mess with tint. I used to slide it to the green side a little bit, but it just further helps to increase a kind of colder environment. So I've recently tried to get away from that. Saturation is pretty simple. It's your black and white versus just an oversaturation of the color. So it increases the overall intensity of your colors. You can do this. It's normally good to bump up your saturation just a little bit. You just got to be careful because it's so easy to make this really unrealistic. So, I mean, even right there looks good, 1.12. And honestly, a lot of times I don't even set that up. I just keep it at 0. But then contrast is the big one. Contrast is huge. And this is even for all you content creators out there. Whenever you're doing your thumbnails or anything, if you don't change anything except for one thing, just make sure to change your contrast. Contrast is what makes your image seem clearer. It makes your image pop. It makes it seem more realistic. And so if you don't change anything but contrast, your image will significantly look better. And so we can kind of see it goes all the way gray and it goes all the way really sharp. And so right there, we're at about the middle. I think it was like 1. And so what we're going to do is we are going to increase this until we feel like we're at about a level that is realistic, but not too sharp. So we don't want to make it so that it's a little overbearing. We just want to increase the contrast in all these little small things like the shadows and these buildings. We want to make it easier to pick things out. It just makes it look better, a little more realistic. And I'll show you guys one more time. So it goes kind of dark. It almost makes that grass a little too dark, but it makes everything a little more individual and sharper. And so if we come back and we go all the way this way, and we can kind of dial it in, and we'll go like right there. I honestly think that's a little bit further than what it was, but I think that's good. All right, and so last but not least, one of the biggest things with contrast that I normally do, and this is why I say it should be at least the one thing, you can see the fuzziness that it enters into the map. And so it is one of the biggest things you can use to make your image seem clearer. It really adds in like a film grain. And so we are going to put it like right about there. It's not too much, and you can kind of see the green is almost popping a little too much in this area, but it doesn't look bad. What we could do is just drop our saturation back down. It still is really green, but this looks pretty clear, and it has gotten rid of all that graininess. So if we come back here, it's kind of funny. Once you increase contrast, you kind of look at it and you're like, how did I even play with that before? There's like a fuzziness in here. And so if you just increase it a little bit, man, it just does wonders. So we're going to do 1.2. That right there is fantastic. This might still be a little too green. And then we can go back into the temperature as well and just increase this even more, just to take away a little bit of that blue. And we could go into Relight as well, but because Relight kind of works on a little bit of a deeper level, you tend to make it really yellow really fast. And so the last setting I do is this tone mapper. And so tone mapper is that high dynamic range kind of mapping of colors. And what it does is it helps you to create almost like an HDR feel. And so your neutral is a standard tone mapper. It's not bad. You can kind of see we have a little bit of fuzziness again. None is the standard. There is a vanilla tone mapper that comes with the game, but it is pretty dated and it has a pretty large yellow. This ACES is called a filmic tone mapper. And it is a tone mapper that is standardized in the filming industry to create a consistent range of colors. And so it's one of the biggest things I use. It does change some of the colors. Like if you jump into like say buses, you can kind of see these are a little bit sharper, and some of them I think are even shifted a little bit. It tends to look a little bit better. I really like it without that tone mapper on. I had found that it was pretty hard to find a consistent color. It makes fires look really good too. Like these look 10 times more real, even though this is our lovely whole neighborhood burning down. I think this thing has burned down like, I don't know, 3 or 4 times now. This is really like whenever you do all those, the foliage is just too much, but you can kind of see, like, look at this now. This shot right here just looks so clean. The contrast from the shadow, the purple from the flowers, even the grass and the shadows, it just looks very real. I think it looks good. You know, the overall contrast is good. And so any of the content creators out there, if you take nothing from this, the one thing that I think would help out everybody, it's helped out me a lot, just to increase the contrast a little bit. It is it's a deal breaker. But thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next episode.